in the coming weeks, Dillon.
All right, joining us now, Florida Republican Senator George LeMieux, a member of the Armed Services Committee and just returned himself from a trip to Afghanistan. Jonathan Capehart is here. Senator, new casualties just being reported into American news agencies. You heard it from Contessa. 7 more American servicemen killed over the past 24 hours in southern Afghanistan. All of this, if nothing else, brings home how high the stakes are for all of us as a nation, because these are our children who perish, never to be around their families, their mothers. We know the stakes, and there is no higher stake than this. Understanding the drug aspect, the dispersal of the terrorist aspect, their activity both in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, how do you begin a decision about the deployment of U.S. resources, most notably our children and secondarily our capital, to this region? Why today do we want to escalate in this particular manner? Or at the very least, what is the basis around which the decision is being made?
Well, Dillon, like you said, I just got back from Afghanistan. I got back yesterday morning, and I was there over the weekend. We left on Thursday. We had a chance to visit with our young men and women who are fighting for our freedom over there, as well as the generals, including General McChrystal, who are putting together our strategy. And look, the loss of life over there is tragic, and this is a war, and we all have to remember that we're in a war, and we have to remind ourselves, why are we fighting this war in Afghanistan? We're fighting it because of the attacks that were brought on our country on September 11th, and to prevent those attacks from ever happening again on our soil. So it is very difficult. It's tough for the American people. You know, I call the parents of these moms and dads and wives who lose their husband or their son or daughter in Afghanistan, and it's very difficult. Right. But I believe, having talked to General McChrystal, having talked to the generals on the ground, that we have to change our strategy, that we cannot continue what we've been doing for the past 8 years, which is just simply doing a counterterrorism strategy of finding the bad guys and killing them, because the bad guys keep replacing them. We have to protect these villages, we have to protect these cities, train up these Afghan troops and Afghan police, and hopefully allow for some kind of stability there, so that the Taliban doesn't just come back in when we leave and terrorize all of those villagers and townspeople.
So what strikes me is what I believe would be our military's ability relatively easily with the investment to secure the villages that you speak to. What concerns me is the knowledge that 93% of the world's heroin is coming out of that country, and so there is a recurring bankroll that is a black market bankroll to fund those who would resist, whether it's the American presence there, whether it was a Russian presence there so many years ago, and that unless we directly engage the heroin aspect, not because I want to get into a drug war or anybody else does, but because that's their oil, that's their economy. The money for that government comes through the sale of that heroin. Are we kidding ourselves to risk more of our children's lives and not go in and either buy up that heroin and pay a market premium to get them to replant, to get a NATO alliance in there, like go with a heroin strategy that is either bribery, replanting the crops, and then creating false price floors to grow coffee at a price that's heroin plus $100 an ounce or whatever it may be? Are we foolish to not go after that money source if we're going to escalate with our lives and our money from our country?
No, Dillon, you're right on this. The heroin problem, the opium problem is financing the Taliban. It's financing Al-Qaeda and the Haqqani network and other terrorist groups. And we are engaging in a strategy. I met with officials in Afghanistan from the DEA, from FBI, who are working side by side with our folks in the Army and the Marines to try to eradicate these networks. And really the best example that I can give you, and what I took from understanding how these networks of terrorists are working over there, is it's no different than how the mafia worked in this country until we eradicated most of them. Yeah. And we're looking at these networks like the mafia, and our Army and military are using DEA and FBI to find these nodes where they're running the drugs, running the money. We're trying to disrupt them. We're going in, we're killing these folks. But if we don't protect these people in their villages, the Taliban just comes right back in.
Yeah.
They maim them, they kill them, and we start back at square one. So if we're going to be in Afghanistan and try to win this war, Dillon, then we've got to do something different. That's why I think McChrystal is on to something.
Yeah.
I think we either have to do that or we got to get out. But staying pat at what we're doing is not working.
Clearly, and I guess I would just argue that adding more troops without coming up with a real way to cripple the drug money, which funds the resistance, only adds to the intensity of the conflict.
Well, you're right. We have to have a strategy on that. I saw a strategy being put in place when I was there over the weekend, and I hope that they will continue to focus on that because that is the money source, like you said.
Senator, thank you so much for your time. Jim Mikolashevsky joins us from the Pentagon now with more on these 7 casualties, American servicemen.